Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast of Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. Today we have a special guest. This is Whitney. Whitney, do you want to do a brief intro on yourself?
Sure. Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Whitney. I'm a pro ultra runner for Newton Running, and I'm also on the Pro Firefly team. I basically specialize in distances ranging from 50K to 100K.
That's awesome. So definitely want to tap into the running and kind of find out like how it started and your running journey.
Yeah, sure. Actually, this has been a long time coming. I knew that I loved running when I was really young. I think we're talking like second or third grade. I always knew I wanted to do something hard and I could never really pinpoint what that was. Um, and I knew that like around high school time, I wanted to inspire others to be their best, push my own limits. But honestly, like even in elementary school, I got this award, said fastest girl 1997. I think that's how long ago we're talking. It must have been, I think, second grade. But in middle school, I got picked up by a coach, and over the summers, like when most kids would take a break, I would still be training and running during the summer. And I remember like begging my sister to ride her bike next to me with a boom box so that I could have music because we didn't have iPods or anything at the time. And then in high school, that's when things really propelled. I was a sprinter. I was doing really well at my events, competed in like the 400, the 800, 4x2, 4x4. And then when I got to college, I took a break from running. I played college tennis for two years and then quickly rekindled my love for running off the track and more of in a distance form. And that's kind of when things turned for me of not how fast I can go, because I knew I had the speed, but how far I could go. And just kind of like pushing the human limits to see what you're capable of and searching for the next big thing.
That's awesome. I'd be curious, how did the running translate to your tennis play?
Yeah, I think I just needed a break. I was kind of burnt out from my coach at the time, and it kind of gave me a chance to reset while allowing me to remain active. And in that college setting, I was at a military school, so we were still very much running. We did a lot of like training runs, the mile run, and stuff like that. So I still had that aspect, but it kind of gave me a chance to reset, figure out like where I wanted to focus on, and then it just landed me back into running. It just kind of confirmed that I had that passion there.
It's awesome. And what are kind of like some of your most recent or best or memorable races that pop up when you think of like your current career?
Oh gosh. Um, I would probably say, each race has different battles that teach you something about yourself. And as runners, we have these opportunities to either learn from experiences, whether it's something that you learn the hard way or it's something that you've done right and has made you really successful. I think that two that really stand out to me are the Keys 100. That was also very recent. That's years of literally working and chipping away to perfect a craft. Heat training, it's a very difficult race. And then also Black Canyon. That was a very difficult race for me. A lot of lessons learned there, not in the good way. I tore my meniscus like 5 miles into that race because I hit the winter season pretty hard and was kind of like not listening to my body, telling me that something was wrong in my legs. So ripped apart my ligaments, ended up having some time off, and that was a very hard lesson learned. But I'd say those two right now, like stick out to me the most. But I think that the best is yet to come because I have some really exciting things, and we can get into that later, that I'll tell you about of what's coming up next. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And something that I think we all deal with and like not currently dealing with, but recently dealt with an Achilles thing. It's so hard to slow down. How do you combat that?
honestly, it's funny because I did long haul 100 and it was extremely muddy. The conditions were absolutely ridiculous. Even Harvey Lewis stopped mid-race and was like, this is crazy. And I knew something was wrong. Like I was having a lot of pain, but I'm in the back of my mind thinking, oh, this is just part of the game. It's supposed to hurt. But I've started really, the lesson that I learned from this was checking in with myself, and I do have a coach, and anytime something pops up now, I'm kind of double checking with him, like, hey, this is what's happening. I feel a spot in my foot. I think it's fine, but I'll keep you posted. So I think being very in tune with your body, actually listening to those warning signs and then taking heed in. So like maybe you need to back off the gas a little bit. That's very important. Actually doing it takes a lot of self-restraint. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely easier said than done for sure.
Yes.
And then I'd be curious, like, what was like the turning pro moment for you? Like, when did you realize, like, hey, I could have a real career in this?
Yeah, I guess honestly, several things. Winning the Keys 100 back to back was huge. Running 100 miles is cool, but honestly, the biggest highlight I've experienced is signing with Newton Running. They completely changed my life. Every single person at that company has basically become like family to me. Um, yeah, I think, just realizing that nothing is capped. You kind of can make things what you want to be if you're willing to put in the work and have that drive and commitment to something. So you have to be very passionate about something. And if you're going to do well, yes, you can put in the time. Yes, you can basically make sacrifices here and there. But unless you're like really pushing yourself, like even when you're tired, getting out there, hammering away, racing hard, like that's what makes you kind of just break through the wall into this next level. And I mean, it's easy to get caught up in titles. My teammate Harvey Lewis, he just broke a world record last year in the backyard event by running 450 miles. And, if you go to his Instagram, what does his profile say? Ultra runner, like chasing your passion, being committed to your sport is great, but doing it for a greater purpose, that's unmatched. And I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to get to show up daily and inspire others to be their best self. I see the hard work they're doing, they inspire me, but showing up for the community and my brand partners is incredibly rewarding. And that title is honestly just an added bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And I'm not close to your level, but with running a lot, like the coolest thing I've realized, it's so humbling because like you go in the marathon world and it's like you have guys running 2 hours. So like, yeah, you go sub 3, like it's not a big deal. And then it also, like you said, the capping aspect, because I'll talk to people, my little sister, or just friends that are like, oh, I want to run 50 miles. And it's like, do you think I could do it? I'm like, oh, you could absolutely do it. It's like,
Yeah.
are you willing is really the difference. Like everybody could do everything. It's just like, what are you actually willing to do?
Yeah, 1000%. I agree with that. And like also the community is so different than any other community you'll find. Like I've even noticed like there is a direct line between like marathon running and ultra running. And this isn't the case everywhere, but like marathoning, I feel like it's very much about, PRs, goals and stuff like that. And then you go out in an ultra, like if you drop your gel and you're like, oh no, I lost my whatever, the person next to you is going to be like, here, take mine. Like it's such like a selfless community. And honestly, it's almost like a brotherhood, if that makes sense. But it's cool because everyone cheers everyone on and they're just out to like see you succeed and be the best person you can be. So I think that's pretty cool.
Right. It's true. And I wonder if it's because like everybody running marathons is like usually in pain like early on. Like you're just like things are burning. Like it's so different from an ultra, obviously, in that like dynamic.
Yeah, it really is. Cups are
And
flying everywhere. Like,
yeah, it's true. Like every time I feel like every time I actually run a marathon, like race a marathon, I like black out. Like it's just like tunnel vision.
yeah, I think once you hit like a certain point, I mean, to an extent, I've noticed that that does sometimes happen with me in ultras, but that's when I also realize I need to back off the gas because we're not running for 4 hours. We're out here running for possibly 12 to 20 hours. Like, that's the other thing about ultra running is like it's hilarious when people are like, oh, well, how fast can you run a mile? Or like, how fast did you run the Keys 100? I'm like, honestly, some of these races are all about survival. Like, it's not all about the time. It's kind of a human science experiment where you're learning a lot about yourself and also just getting to the end is a huge feat for a lot of us. So I think that's something important to be said too.
Yeah, it's so true. It's just like keep moving. And something that I noticed with just crewing a lot of friends recently, it's just like the shorter breaks, the better. Because like if you could just keep moving, your moving pace isn't going to matter. It's just gonna it will be quicker.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually this the Keys 100 this year, we did not stop at all. Like it was a continuous movement. My crew kind of did like a moving exchange and then we continued through. And I think I even have my shoes here. They're ruined. I ran through like bleeding feet towards the end. Like didn't stop to change my socks or anything. I just, for me it was like the sooner I can get to the end, the sooner this is done. So yeah, I totally get that.
Absolutely. Now, I'd be curious, like, how do you balance life and running? And it sometimes for myself, like it doesn't work. Like it's just I'm very unbalanced with running, and that's okay. But I'm curious how you combat it and like how you kind of go about it.
Yeah, so I think, distance running, it is tough to manage for anyone on any level. I noticed that, you have to make sure you're sleeping enough. You've got to have the bandwidth to multitask and have those jam-packed days, but making small sacrifices that add up, like you don't want to completely eliminate one thing because then you're completely changing your life, but maybe cutting out 30 minutes of watching TV, 30 minutes of mindless scrolling. Maybe you wake up 30 minutes earlier. Now you've got an hour and a half that you can put a run in or a gym workout somewhere. And I guess schedule is different for everyone, but for me, like I work out in the evening to not only decompress, but also I find that it challenges my body more. And then on the weekends, I want to have somewhat of a social life, right? So knocking out those runs early, like if that means waking up at 4 a.m. and doing it to get like 20, 30 miles in, that's what I'm doing. If you push it later in the day, you're more likely to have things pop up, it gets pushed, a storm shows up, and now it's lightning outside and you can't get it done. So I think having the balance to know that you can make those tiny little sacrifices throughout your daily life, you can make the time for it. And you just got to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
Yeah.
And and also I think like the unique thing that I've seen you post about, and it's just that I've realized as well, is like the traveling within running, it's so special. Like it's changed everything for me.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, not everyone has the luxury to be able to travel often. But it really does help you become a well-rounded athlete. Staying in one area, yes, you can master the terrain, but you're also kind of competing against the same people. And by traveling, not only are you exposing yourself to new elements, but by keeping your body guessing, like our body has a muscle memory, right? So the more you switch it up, the more you challenge yourself, you'll just become well-rounded overall as an athlete. And then taking on other races is also a huge thing because you have new competition. You learn a lot, and I think that traveling is just like a huge factor when it comes to bettering yourself as a runner.
Absolutely. And then just the enjoyment of like being in a new place. Like my favorite thing is to like just go on vacation and go somewhere new and just hit a long run and
Yeah.
kind of explore.
Yeah, that's always fun. I used to do this thing like I've done it in Denver. I did it in LA one time, but like, I would go out with a group of people, we're on a trip, and I'm like, I still have to get my long run in. So I would wake up while everyone is sleeping and kind of do like a run tour for myself. And I would kind of map out this route before I would get to the area. Like, what do I want to see? So like LA, I went to I ran to Muscle Beach. I did the Venice boardwalk. I went through like the canals. And then at the end, I stopped at like a bakery that I had wanted to check out and a coffee shop. So it's kind of you allow yourself to have fun while putting time in on your feet, which is
Yeah,
really cool.
it really is. And something too is who are you like outside of running? Because it's so easy to kind of get locked into this box, especially at your level.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's wild. A lot of ultra runners, like we have full-time jobs, especially like I'm single, like running doesn't always pay the bills. So I have a full-time career. I'm a Coast Guard veteran, I'm a dog mom. I've got a group of close friends that I love dearly. They support me in every way possible. But my full-time career, I write manuals for a luxury seaplane company that's based out of Fort Lauderdale, Tropic Ocean Airways. I work remote, so that's kind of what allows me to travel while I'm running. And honestly, that career has been absolutely life-changing. Very passionate about it. I love it. And on top of that, I'm also coming out with a YouTube to kind of like give a little more of a behind the scenes look at like what this type of life is like. Because everything that is on Instagram, like you said, you kind of see like here and there that some of the things that I'm doing day to day, but like there's so much more depth to that, like crewing for friends, pacing them. What is that like? What's everyday training like? I even was talking with Mike Melton about coming to check out and see like what it's like to time these crazy off-grid events. So I think having that vlog coming out soon is gonna kind of give a little more depth to what goes on behind the scenes as well.
And now like filming that, like I'd be curious to hear because it's also kind of nice to have just the snippets. Like now letting people fully in, like how do you feel about that?
There are definitely things I still keep private. But honestly, like I'm an open book. Like I've never been someone to share something that wasn't outside of my personality or like something that wasn't a product that I'm using in and out day to day. So I'm kind of doing it every day anyways. It's just like a little more than running, if that makes sense. So allowing people to see that like, yes, I'm this elite athlete, but I also have all these other weird, quirky things. Like I just posted a reel about like I always have holes in my socks and like I can't roast marshmallows. Like, so I think it's important to know like we're all human, just trying to do our best. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm an open book as well. My family would probably argue like too much, but to each their own. And then yeah, I'd be curious, like, because you mentioned you were single, like how navigating relationships and then just being single goes, because I absolutely get looked at like I'm crazy, and you were doing this on like a completely another level. So I'm just curious how it kind of works because I'm sure a lot of people are just intimidated.
Oh, gotta go. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this is a tough one because dating as an athlete at any level, especially as an elite ultra runner, is really, really, really tricky. And like you said, it's tricky for us because we don't have a lot of bandwidth. And I guess that's where perfecting like the balance of work, exercise, social life, that really comes into place. And we have a lot of eyes on us. We're under a lot of pressure and stress. And finding someone that calms that storm for you, that's confident, has done quite a bit of self-work, it's essential and honestly really hard to come by. I think it can also be really intimidating to be with someone who is constantly under a microscope with people in their DMs or leaving crazy comments on posts. And, I constantly train with a group of guys. So having confidence, being secure, and having trust in a relationship is really key. Yeah, I think it's been difficult just because, I sometimes confide in my guy friends and they're like, you can be intimidating. I'm like, how is this 5'4", like 100-pound little girl like intimidating? Like I can't really see it, but it does kind of make sense to some level. It's like being competitive, having drive. Some people, I don't know. It's hard to explain without diving too much into my personal life. I typically try to find people with more depth. They're going to have their own interests and own passions that will be that best friend and biggest fan and so much more. So it's a very tricky topic.
Yeah, that's true. And just, I think one thing too that we could both agree on here is that like we realize that there is no limit to capabilities, and I think other people realize that, and that could just scare people to begin with because it's like, oh, you're willing to just like run 100 miles. Like, what else will you do?
Actually, that's a good point. I do, and it's funny, I don't date other runners, although I know a lot of people are like, why not? Something I don't do. And a lot of people look at me like, okay, this girl's crazy. But honestly, it's all relative. And I think the best way you can explain it to someone from the outside looking in is that, you kind of build up a tolerance over time to where it's like, okay, you run a 5K, that's very easy to me. But maybe someone who's never stepped like outside and run a mile, 5K is a lot. And as you continuously do this over time, everything becomes relative. So you're kind of just like increasing your capability. It's not something that happens overnight. So honestly, I don't think it's that crazy, but yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
people have a hard time seeing past that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's some advice you would have to like a younger version of yourself?
Um, oh man, I honestly have, I would probably give myself zero advice because I truly believe that the trials and tribulations that we experience throughout our life are essentially what shape us to who we are today. And without everything, no matter how bad or good they are, it's important that we learn from each of those things. And I wouldn't be who I am today without everything that has happened to me. So instead of maybe giving myself advice, I'd probably like hype myself up. You're a bad bee, you're doing great, stay on this path, you got this. Like, I think that's probably the route that I would go because no matter what has happened, I think it's landed me right here and I'm very grateful for it.
Totally agree. And has it always been within you to like kind of like push your limits and like find your capabilities?
Um, I feel like the people around me honestly really push me to strive to be a better person. Like seeing other people like, oh, you've inspired me to start running. And I'm like, that really resonates with me. And I'm like, I can't let them down. And I think for more or less, it's like a give and take, ebb and flow type of relationship between myself and the people around me. That's honestly what keeps me going. Community, inspiring people, and helping each other get to, you know, new limits, which is really exciting. And that's kind of what gives me that drive.
Yeah. That was actually my next question is what keeps you going? Because that's awesome. But I completely align with that. And it's so cool when it switches because I know for me personally, it was such like a solo like mission, like the David Goggins of the world is basically like what I surrounded myself with. And then like you realize like this is such an island to put yourself on. And community definitely changes everything.
Yeah, it really does. And I think also surrounding yourself with the people who have like those same types of values. Um, like oftentimes some of my social life, I'll try to incorporate that into running so that I get to see my friends who also run, and that's how we kind of get to spend some time together here and there. It is very tough to navigate. Like I'm not gonna lie or try to butter it up, but yeah, you really have to perfect making time for the people around you because they're going to be your biggest supporters. So
It's true. And I'd be curious, how many hours a week are you running and or working out?
so this is interesting. I was self-coached until a few months ago. The coach that I have now, I've tried, it was everything against my like willpower to like be hands off and just let go of the wheel and do what he's saying. So I am looking at this day to day, trying to not focus on the time, because previously, like I was running 100 miles a week. Now that is not the case. I did tear my meniscus, so I'm coming back from that. But typically, it could be anywhere from like 50 to 90. So that's kind of as we start to build up, I'll kind of see what he has in store for me. But like typically, that's the range of distances I would do on a weekly basis.
Isn't it so funny how that works? Because I'm coming from the opposite. I just had marathon coaches and coaches the whole time, and now I have no coach. And I went from probably averaging 50, 60 a week to averaging 80, 90 a week. And it's just like it's sick that we do that though.
Yeah, and it is hilarious because, the grass is always greener on the other side. But I also think that there is something to coaching. Like for me, I was coming off of knowledge base from being coached in high school. Like the world of sports and running is continuously improving. So allowing for me to focus on other things and hand that off to him has like kind of like given me a weight off my shoulders, but also I know that I'm getting the best information because this is what he studies. Like, he's gonna make sure that I'm successful because I'm representing him. And then also in that, like I'm not kind of like keeping myself in this plateau, right? Because I'm kind of going off of these old training mechanisms.
Sure, yeah. And I'm sure it's like there could be seasons with it, right? Where like you don't have a coach at times, and then you definitely do.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. And I mean, there are so many outlets and resources out there. Like you don't necessarily have to have a coach. Like you can find a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's so much internet information out there that you can kind of like feed off and pull things together to become very successful at running on your own.
Yeah, sure. And you had some news to share. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, this is crazy. So the other night, like before we like I think I'm still in shock because for a while I kind of like sat in it. I could not sleep the entire night. I got a text from Mike Melton and he said, "See you in Frozen Head State Park." And I was like, that's interesting. The next morning, I got an email that I received the entry into the Barkley Fall Classic, which is huge because if you win the Barkley Fall Classic, that means you're going to the Barkley Marathons. And that's something that has been on my list for a really long time. You know that my teammate Harvey Lewis, like he's gone at this a few times. It's something that I've really wanted to take on. I've got a lot to learn. Like everything that I thought I was going for this year has kind of shifted based on this. So that's kind of when I was saying, like, what's my toughest race? What's like the biggest thing I've ever done? I think it's coming. I think it's going to be this. And like, I've never been like so energetic about something and really excited to like go for something new. I know it's going to be incredibly difficult, but like with that comes new ways of training. It's a very exciting time. So crazy.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And if you
Thank
want to do
you.
like a brief summary for people who don't know what the Berkeley Marathon is.
Yeah, so the Barkley Marathons, God, I don't even know where to start. It's kind of it's known as the world's toughest ultra marathon. Getting into it is very secretive. Um, you basically go into the woods. It's a very tough course. You're off trail. Searching with a compass for books that are strategically placed, and you tear out pages of this book that correspond with your bib number for the loop, and you're basically summiting the equivalent of Mount Everest several times because the climb is so significant. It's got extreme cutoffs. It's in the time that the race has been going on since 1986. I think we're at like, is it 20 runners have completed the race? We just had a few runners and the very first female to ever finish the race, Jasmine Paris, just finished this year. So it's pretty incredible. It's very difficult to get into. Only 40 people go in a year. If you have a chance to watch a documentary on it, it's very fascinating. There's a lot of good YouTubes out there. And yeah, it's just one for the books. So really excited for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know there's a ton of navigation in that. Like you said, there's a compass. Like that is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, no GPS, like so I definitely have a lot to learn. I've got a cousin who lives out in Charlotte. He's an Army Ranger, so I'm planning to spend a lot of time out there, like doing land navigation and then also training for like maybe a month out in Tennessee to get used to the terrain. So it's wild. But you know, this year, like after the injury, it's like I was so disappointed in myself from like hitting that and having to like DNF, like physically walk away from a race. Like that was heartbreaking. So I'm like coming back with fierce like goals and we're just ready to get this thing rolling.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And honestly, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.